Hello? Hello? Okay. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sucheta. Just a brief introduction about the session. We are going to cover this very interesting topic today, stakeholder management mindset in managing communications in modern times. So, I hope you all know what is the importance of stakeholder management, because we need to adapt ourselves to different stakeholders and their needs, and then plan our communication around it. So what role does the stakeholder management play today in the success of the project? That is the topic I'm going to cover. And once we understand what is stakeholder management and what are the different stakeholders, then obviously we can plan our communication around it. Okay, so that's the topic of today. Welcome all. Good afternoon again. I'm Sucheta here. Let's start. Okay. So before I go to this topic, I just wanted to discuss with you one of the research I was reading. The research says that 95% of the risk is all about people not delivering as promised, not supporting, and working actively against the outcome of the project, the success of the project. This is the biggest risk that has been perceived, and 95% of the failure is happening due to this risk. And if you see the root cause of this problem, it's somewhere, the stakeholder management not being done properly. The identification of the stakeholders and the analysis of the stakeholders is somewhere missing, which leads to this kind of results. So, before we go into stakeholder management, let's understand what are the challenges we face today. Okay, what are the challenges we face in terms of people or stakeholders while working on any project? So I interviewed few people, and this is very practical answers which I got from very seasoned project managers. The first one is they said there are too many stakeholders, and we all are seeing this day in and day out. There are too many stakeholders with varied interest and impact on certain outcome of the project. The classic example which we all are seeing nowadays is the recent Lokpal bill. Right? It's being discussed day in and day out on the news channels. And what is the example there? It's Lokpal bill is a big project. It's an outcome of the project will be the publication of that bill. But what we are seeing is there are too many stakeholders, and each of them have different interests and different impacts due to the outcome of that bill. Just stop a while and think, are we managing them properly? Are we doing this in a planned manner? I don't think so. Do we have a list first where we can say that these are the number of stakeholders who will be impacted by this? Then do we have a list of what are the positive and negative impacts? And then what is really missing, I see, is the decision making process. Can we all come together, sit and collaborate and see how we can minimize or eliminate the negative impact? Are we doing this in a planned way? Are we analyzing this? I'm sure it can be done. There are a lot of tools and techniques available today to handle this. The second important thing is there are too many negative stakeholders. That is the challenge. What do you mean by negative stakeholders? Of course, the ones whose interests are negatively impacted, or the ones who are directly negatively impacted by the outcome of the project. Another classic example I heard from some of the stakeholders, some of the project managers is working with a public sector projects is very complex. It gives a lot of challenges, again, due to the slow decision-making processes, very difficult to get the buy-in on decision-making on certain aspects. There are a lot of middlemen, a lot of players in between, very complex structure, decentralized process. The speed of work is very slow. These are some of the very practical challenges which makes communication very difficult as well as the stakeholder management very difficult. And then the most important thing is the speed of the work, because if you have to work with certain organizations which have very constrained processes and policies, you are your speed of the work, limits to the speed of the work of the most powerful person or the most critical stakeholder in the team. So, for example, if you're working with a government, public sector or government company, you have to adhere to their processes because they become your customers, and then the limit to which you can do something is limited to what they are constrained at. So sometimes we need to work with this constraint. And then comes the classic limitation, which is the capabilities of technology, skills, resources, and competencies. So these are some of the very, very classic challenges that has happened. Another classic challenge today which we are facing is we all are working in a very global environment. So where we most of the times work with people we have never seen. And then how do you track the project? How do you track completeness? How do you track quality?
Sorry for interrupting.
There is somewhere, why is Avi?
Actually, we're getting feedback like your voice is echoing. So can you please come to closer to the mic?
Is it okay now?
It's a little better, but even now it's echoing.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so coming to some other important aspects is basically, the presentation of the status. So we work with customers and they say, yes, everything is fine, we have done, we are ready. And then when you go there or you actually start working or you come to a particular milestone, it is not done. So communication about the status of the project, the readiness of a particular milestone. Then the 24/7 changing requirements, expectations around quality, no experience in working in offshore and on-site models. These are some of the challenges that were quoted by very seasoned project managers, which leads to challenges in communication and stakeholder management. So this is some of the background, and then let's go and see that how we can handle the stakeholders and how we can be successful. But even before that, even before we go there, again another important aspect I have seen is how do you define success? Because if you say that stakeholder management plays a very critical role in the success of the project, or communication plays a very critical role in the success of the project, then I think it's very important to first understand how you define success. And again, I did a small survey and I found, unfortunately, the definition of success is defined very narrowly. And success means different things to different people. And then we did a very interesting research and we found out that actually how individuals respond to different situations in a project or while handling communications or stakeholder management, it heavily depends on how their organizations define success and how they are measured, or how the project performance or the project manager's performance is measured. Right? And then let's say then how do you define success? So first important thing is, it is very, if some of you are at very senior level or if you are people who can define the success criteria, I feel is, when you start the project, the first communication you need to do is to define success criteria. And then the success criteria are at different levels, right? They are at the business level, they are at the strategic level to the company, then at the project level, and then it also depends on how the customer measures success. This is another interesting thing found, that many people who are handling the projects are not aware of how customer defines or measures success. We never had the dialogue with the customer in the beginning of the project. So I think the first important step towards successful communication is having that open dialogue with the customer in the beginning of the project and documenting, interviewing the customer and documenting the success criteria. Understanding the strategic picture at the customer level, how this project is important to the customer at the strategic level, what are the market dynamics and challenges the customer is facing, how is the customer positioned in the market, brand value, market share, and what is the impact this project which we are going to deliver or we are working on is going to create on the customer. What is the political landscape? What is the competitive landscape? What are the challenges the customer is facing? And again, very interesting analysis found that this is missing at the strategic level. Unfortunately, we all start with requirements. We all as project managers jump into requirements. Okay, what is this product about? What are the requirements? And we miss the strategic picture. We miss to gather the strategic requirements from the customer and aligning with the strategic goals of the customer to define success. So I think modern project management is more of an art. We all are very good at science. Science is all the PM work and all those 9 knowledge areas. But the art of, being successful is not documented anywhere. And that is mainly, around the strategic alignment of the broader objectives, which is missing today. And that sometimes starts creating an impact on the success of the project because of lack of strategic understanding, we miss some of the stakeholders. And then those stakeholders sometimes start creating negative impact or, starts getting negatively impacted. And then we come to know very late in the game that these are the stakeholders and probably we even miss to identify them. So I would say the first step of communication is to identify the success criteria at the customer level. Ask the customer, when will he feel that this project will be successful? Because if the customer is successful, obviously your organization, your management will be happy with you. And if the organization is happy, your management is happy, they will be happy with you. Group of the team who delivered the project, and then the individuals, and then of course you as the project manager. So I feel this is the most important step when you start the project. Now, as we saw that identifying the stakeholders is important. We all know that this is a classic stakeholder management model. Identify the stakeholders, document their needs, analyze, their influence, interest, impact, support, the level of engagement, what is the opposition we face, and then have a plan to manage them, then work on that plan, and the most important is continuously work on the plan. It's not today, it's a very dynamic world, it's a time of reorgs and changes every year, every 6 months. So the most important thing is to continuously working on your strategy and seeing if there is any change required. And then why does this change happen? Why would this change happen? This change may happen due to various reasons. One is because the fast changing technology, the changing market, the change of vision, the change of orgs and the realignments can, lead to the change in the stakeholder management strategy, because if this changes, the importance of the project changes, the impact changes, and everything changes. So let's define some of the stakeholders. Who are the internal stakeholders? First thing is the stakeholders who have formal power. These are the people who have direct power, and one of them is of course customer. And then the second, people who have informal or indirect power, who are various people who are impacted by this project. Then, the people who are technical knowledge and the know-how about the project, the organization's core competency, and the most important is network of relations to the external stakeholders. We know that there are some people in our team who have very good relations to the critical stakeholders, customers, and then gathering the information from them and understanding the bigger picture and the holistic picture of this project is very important. And then let's go to the classic PMBOK stakeholder management grid and once again look at it. So the first important thing is to identify the stakeholders at strategic level. So let's see some of the examples of the stakeholders who are negatively impacted or whose interests are negatively impacted, but they have low influence or low power of the project. Can we think of some examples which have happened in the real time? And the impact of missing this, impact of not identifying them, not communicating with the stakeholders is very, very high. Another very big example which I see in the news is the Lavasa story. If you all know, Lavasa is a beautiful town that is being set up near Pune. And what has happened there? It's ready. It's all ready, but it was on hold for quite some time because of legal issues. So what is the root cause? They forgot some important stakeholders whose sanction and approval was required before they could. The legal stakeholders, the governments, the ministries, the environmental experts. These are the stakeholders who were negatively impacted, or their interests were negatively impacted. But can you see the impact on the people who are running the project? Can you think of the return on investment? It's a huge project. It's all ready, but it cannot be used because there is a legal stay on that. So sometimes we miss on this aspects of the business or strategic alignment, that if you miss a critical stakeholder, your product is ready and you cannot use it. So if you calculate the loss in terms of return on investment of not being able to use a product just because of lack of stakeholder management and planning and lack of communication and getting the approvals and decision making at the right time. So actually this should have happened at the beginning of the project, even before planning, that who are the stakeholders whose approval was required. Another classic example we know is the Tata Nano, the failure of Tata Nano in West Bengal. So we all know that the farmers were negative stakeholders there. And again we missed to identify one negative stakeholders and the impact of that. Similarly, we have the Narmada Dam story, where the farmers were the negative stakeholders. And then after Tata Nano, I know some of the company which who did a very good study, and they eliminated the impact of the negative stakeholders. I think the farmers were the stakeholders there also, but they took the farmers in confidence first, they compensated them, and then they went ahead with the project. So I think these are the things you need to do at the initiation and planning phase itself, by identifying the stakeholders and eliminating or minimizing the negative impact on them. In the IT world, in the classic IT world, I have faced so many problems, so many such examples in my career, where during 2000 there used to be a lot of outsourcing to India, and then there used to be a lot of people from where the projects were outsourced who were negatively impacted. So how were those companies dealing with them, to minimize the impact on the project? In the IT world today, there are so many examples where just launching of one project can make people lose job. That is the outcome of the project. You are automating something. It's the world of cloud computing. So I know a case where the implementation of one project would lose job of 2,000 people in that company. So how do you take these aspects into planning? And sometimes it is beyond your role as a project manager. And then how do you handle them? So the first thing is show consideration to the people who are highly impacted. Make use of the interest through involvement in low risk areas. Keep them informed and consult them, and try to get their support and goodwill. Otherwise, there is no point even in starting the project. Then next come to the next stakeholders who have low interest but who have high power, in the success and the outcome of the project. So how do you deal with them? Engage and consult on the interest area. Try to increase their level of interest and engagement, and aim to move it into the right hand box. So try to move the people who are negative stakeholders, or who have less interest, to the people who have more interest. So what I'm saying is, the people who are in the yellow box, try to actually move them into the red box. Try to make them the key players. The quadrant 4, the red quadrant, the pink quadrant is the most important quadrant, because these are the stakeholders who are the key players in the project and their interest is most important. So they have high interest and they have high power, and they are very highly impacted by the success of the outcome of the project. So these are the key players. Focus efforts on this group, involve them in all the governance aspects, decision making, engage and consult them very regularly, monitor them very closely. And then coming to the green quadrant, which is low interest and low influence. These are the stakeholders, you need to inform, keep them updated, monitor them with minimum interest, but regular communications, use letters, all this. What are some of the other stakeholders at the strategic level? Shareholders. Shareholders are again the stakeholders who have high interest, but they have low power or low influence. But they are very highly interested. If you look at the big projects like Reliance Power or the projects at the strategic level, these are the stakeholders who have very high interest, and sometimes they can create very high pressure on the management if their interests are negatively impacted. Who are customers? Customers are always high interest and high power. Who are competitors? Where do you fit competitors into? It is very important to there are some non-negotiable stakeholders which we always need to identify here. So competitors are always negatively impacted. Their interests are negatively impacted, and the outcome of the project also they are negatively impacted. So this is the first step in identifying the stakeholders. And then how do you handle them? So the way you handle them is actually, high power, these are the people you must fully engage and make the greatest efforts to satisfy them. High power and less interested, put enough work with these people to keep them satisfied, but not so much that they become bored with the message. I think this is very important in communication. This is where, these are generally the people, sponsors, senior management, leadership team, who have invested money in you, but what they need is the very high level report, what the project is on track or not, what are the challenges, what are the risks, and what is the support you need from them. Low power and interested people, keep these people adequately informed and talk to them to ensure that no major issues are arising. In fact, these people can often be very helpful with the details of your project. And then coming to the low power and low interested people, again monitor these people, but don't bore them with excessive communications. These are typically the support groups, support staff, finance teams, your human management teams, whose performance is not directly measured by the outcome of your project. If you try to see your typical organization, you need support from them. You need support from the human resource recruitment team, to onboard your resources. But the way their success is measured is on a different thing. So sometimes they are not directly impacted. Similarly, the finance team who processes your invoice, purchase orders, vendor management, these are the typical people whom you need to monitor. So it's very easy, once we understand the stakeholder management strategy, we can easily, plan the communication around them. Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next model. So there are different models. Okay, so there are the different models. Now this is mainly about communication. So how do you handle communication? How do you give the right information at the right time with the right impact to different stakeholders? And that typically depends upon exactly their interests and their impact. And it is very important to note that, how do you maintain the confidential information? So there are a lot of negative stakeholders who in the project we need to deal with, and how do we maintain the confidentiality? It is also important to know what not to share and how to share the information. So that is about a very typical communication model. This is just a basic introduction. Let's go to the second thing of how to deal with some of the stakeholders. And here is, the typical grid of impact versus cooperation. And the most important here, I feel, is the stakeholders in the fourth quadrant, that is the stakeholders who have high impact and low cooperation. So these are very critical stakeholders because they are highly impacted by the outcome of the project, but their cooperation is low. These are typically, the people who are in the power, most decision making, but they are not as much as supportive. I think the simple strategy to deal with them is, to go with them. Just go with them, and the strategy should be disagree and commit. So sometimes you need to follow what they are saying, even though you might not feel it is the right or the best way of doing it. And that is one of the biggest challenge. Initially, to work with these people is definitely to disagree and commit. I think to begin with is, to start working with them and then building the relationship with them and trying to get the buy-in from them on what you feel is the better way, to deal with the situation. But unfortunately, sometimes that is also not possible. And then your project management limits to the project management of these critical stakeholders. Your ability to influence, or your ability, your knowledge, your ability to impact or apply the knowledge of project management to the success of the project limits to the limitation of the most critical or the powerful stakeholder in the project. And then let's go to the next quadrant, which is, the people who have high impact, but they have high cooperation. I think these are the people who are mixed blessings. Why do they say mixed blessings? Because if they are supporting, it is very good. But if they are not supporting, then it's very difficult. So it's very important to collaborate with them. What do you mean by collaboration? Collaboration is basically when you have conflicts, when you have disagreements, how do you make the decision? It's the ability for two teams in conflict to come together, sit, confront, and have an open dialogue. That is the biggest challenge in communication while collaborating, because to collaborate, first you need to say that I disagree, and you need to state the reason why you disagree, and then being open to others' reason of why the other is disagreeing or what are the challenges he is facing with a particular decision or action, and implementing them. There are not much challenges with the first quadrant, because if you see the lowermost quadrant where the impact is high and the impact is low and the cooperation is high, these are very supportive people actually, because you try to have a strategy to involve them, try to leverage them in a positive way for the success and the outcome of your project. And coming to the low-low combination where the impact is low and the cooperation is low, I think these are called marginal type of stakeholders. Again, monitor them with minimum interest. So I'm just quickly going through some of the models, because these are very important models, because you're trying to look at all the aspects of the identification and the analysis, and trying to put all the stakeholders in different quadrants. The moment you put them in different quadrants, you know what are their needs, the level of expectations they have. This is another important model which is useful in risk management. So I think one of the very important places for risk management, for identifying risk, is in stakeholder management. And again, you all know the maximum risk management happens in the beginning of the project. And we all also know that the most radical decision a risk management can take, or the most radical strategy of avoiding the risk, is stopping the project. And many times we have some stakeholders in this quadrant where they have very high power but low support. So in this such a situation, will you be even able to take off your project? So this grid is very important in doing the SWOT analysis. It is the interest influence grid, where you identify the stakeholders who have low support and low power. They are low risk to the project, but again continue monitoring them, because you never know when they become high risk. But the red quadrant is very important. Whereas if you come to the green quadrant, you have some people who have high support and low power. Again, there is an opportunity there. Try to leverage them towards a positive outcome of the project. And then we have the ideal case. If that is there, then we just don't have to worry, because we have high support and high power. Then, the project will have minimum challenges and obstacles. This is same model, the next one is the importance versus engagement. I think same thing put in a different way. There is a slight difference between support and engagement. Support is, I think the previous one, the support mainly comes from the customers, your sponsors or senior management. These are people who are not actually working on the project. But when you come to engagement, this is actually the people who are working on the project. This is your immediate project team. Okay? So your architects, your development, the test managers, development managers, project managers, quality people. There is a slight difference when they are working, how engaged they are. And, what are their interests? Again, that depends on, the role, the way their performance is measured, their specific aspirations, and trying to align them, because these are the people who are going to give you the direct output. These are the people who are actually having the hands-on the project. And again, there is a risk if there is some person who is less engaged, because then he is a risk to the project. So these are the things you need to consider, and these are at different levels. So actually, the output of identification should be a huge stakeholder register. Probably what I do is at different levels. I do it one at the strategic level of the project, project level risk at strategic level, then at the customer level, because in the customer also there are huge team members. There's a lot of teams, the IT team, the business team, and sometimes they also have conflicting requirements. They also have conflicting interests. They have budget issues. They have requirement issues. So forming all these grids at the customer level, and then you come to your organization level, because in big organizations in the global environment, you have again another similar grid where there are a lot of varying interests, why there are different players into this project, and what are their outcomes. And then is at your team level. So what I have seen in my experience is this is missed at some level or the other. I have seen sometimes people are too focused on their immediate team, because what project manager feels is, oh, just tell me the requirements and I will deliver it to the triple constraints, that is time, cost, and schedule. But sometimes not being able to see the bigger picture may create obstacles. So that is why nowadays they are saying that triple constraints it's a hygiene. It's no more the customer or people are no more satisfied just because you deliver the project on time, cost, and scope. It's just a hygiene. And we all know what is hygiene. Hygiene is if you give it, they are not satisfied. If you deliver it to that schedule, they are not satisfied. But if you don't deliver, definitely they are dissatisfied. So what else does the organization want? And we'll come and we'll see that later. But it's very important. And at the same time, sometimes I have seen that people are too much focused on customer, and they fail to miss the internal stakeholders or miss to analyze their importance or their aspirations, which leads to failures at different levels. So failures are at different levels, right? Not being able to deliver on time, quality, not being able to make the customer happy. You have delivered the requirements, but the end user is not happy. So this is the first step of identifying the stakeholders, analyzing all the aspects, and then at least putting them in the right place, and then devising the communication strategy to deal with them. And then this is the last model. This is one of the very interesting case studies. It was published in the PMI Global Congress in 2003. This is called as a stakeholder circle. Now this is actually targeting at the communication that you need to do with different stakeholders. And this was basically classified stakeholders into three groups. It said that if the attitude of a stakeholder, of a critical stakeholder, is equal to the optimal position, that means he is optimal, he is supportive, then how do you maintain the communication with such stakeholders? So if the attitude is equal to the optimal position desired for that project, it's a good state, it's a normal state to be in. So how do you manage the communication? So communication can be maintained at business as usual. So we have formal communication with them as per our normal project management strategies, regular frequency of weekly reports, monthly reports, weekly meetings, monthly meetings, steering committee meetings, and so on. So this is a good to have state in. But there is a better state to be in. The current attitude is better than the optimal position. That means we are in a pretty good state. Probably, you work with this customer before. This has been an old account. The trust is already built. You have good relations. The customer is very mature. He understands the challenges. So this is a better thing to have, and then the approach will totally depend on relationship. So sometimes, you might have some leeway there, to work with such a customer. You can be a little bit easy, but I would still recommend the communication to be business as usual. So I have again seen through my example that I don't think we should use this as a excuse of not following all the project management practices or not being formal. I think it's always good to have good relations, but still minimum you should do is to have business as usual communication with them. But this definitely helps when you have challenging times and things go wrong. And then it of course depends on the knowledge of that stakeholder, that why is he supportive to you? Why is the attitude better than the optimal position? What are his interests? What are his aspirations due to which he is more supportive? Sorry for that. And then let's go to the third case, which is a difficult case. And we all must have faced this many times. Here the attitude is worse than the optimal position. So these are the difficult stakeholders, they are at the critical position, they are at the critical power, but difficult to deal with. Classic example is not being available on time, not available for meetings, not available for sign-offs, approvals, or their interests are negatively impacted. This is a difficult situation and requires careful consideration. And the communication with these people really requires special efforts. It requires heroic communication efforts. I have faced these situations certain times, and I have also met in some conferences or workshops where I have met people that it was difficult to get even 5 minutes time from that person, to talk to, and he was a very critical stakeholder. You cannot even escalate against this person. So, and how did the team achieve that? And they literally tracked his daily routine, and they found out that he kind of walked between the two corporate buildings during lunchtime, and they literally met him between those exact that time, and followed him on the road while crossing one building, and made time to talk to him. This was really a heroic effort. That it's 3 months I'm not able to get the time from this person, and how do I deal with him? I cannot escalate against him. I need to win him. I need to build relation, trust, and confidence with that person. But before that, I need to bridge a communication gap. Before that, I need to build a channel. And I don't even get an opportunity to build that channel. So how do I work? So these are some of the cases where you need to have a targeted communication plan. So these are some of the important stakeholder management models which I have found through my experience. And then let's see the impact of communication that we do. Again, this is at different levels. This is at organization level, this is at the team level, this is at the customer level. So what this model says is, our actions, what happens is if our actions and our communication does not match. It's a very interesting thing, and I have really studied this and seen this in practice. So, let's say that there is a lingering problem, and you are not taking any action on that, and you are not even communicating about that. Have you faced the situation, or have you, as a team member, faced this? That there is a lingering problem in the team. There is a danger, but no one is talking about it. No one is taking any action about this. Is a very dangerous thing to have. So it's very important, to communicate such problems. And of course, status report is the most powerful medium where you can communicate. Again, this happens at the organization level. If I would have to explain this to little deviate from the project communication management, if I want to take an example of a organizational communication management, I have seen this as a classic example that has happened around 2000 recession time. So let's say that it was a peak recession time, 2000 2001, and there were huge impacts to most of the organizations. And there was one organization. This is one of the research published. So it was not doing well. The customers were not signing the contracts. A lot of accounts were getting closed. The quarterly reports were showing lot of loss and no progress. So the team or the whole employees can see this as a problem. That something is going to happen. The organization is not doing well. We are on bench. There are no projects. So there is a lingering problem. But there was no communication from the organization that created anxiety, lot of stress, grapevine, speculations. Then I have seen another case where, same case, in the recession, there is similar situation, but how another company dealt with it. So high in communication but low in action. So what happened? They were communicating that we are not doing well, we are doing this. There may be layoffs, there may be salary cuts, there may be this, that, but no action. Low in action. Again, what happens is, so the first company, they were not saying it also, neither people could see any action. The second company, actually, they were communicating that we will do this, we will do that, this may happen, that may happen, these are the various strategies, but no action. Again, people get mixed signals, and that creates low trust in the leadership. This happens at all the levels. It happens at organization level, at the project level, team level. So if you are communicating and not taking action, it creates low trust. It's very important, and I think as a leader, communication plays such a critical role here. Then let's go to the next quadrant. High in action, low in communication. And this is a real example I'm quoting from the 2000 recession, that I have seen one company directly taking actions. The people were being laid off, they were being given notices, they were asked to go home, but there was no communication. There was no formal communication or announcement at the organization level that what is happening. People were just seeing actions. Now what happens? Again, you are acting, but you are not communicating about your actions. Now, people are going to again speculate, right? Because if you don't tell the intention of the action, people are going to fill in the gaps. They are going to interpret, why these things are happening. Again, this is very dangerous. It causes confusion. And then there is a fourth important model where your action matches with your communication. So if you, and this is one of the companies which I felt dealt in a very good way, they called for an organization meeting and they announced that we are in such a stage, but there is nothing to worry. These are the actions we are going to take. This is the level at which we are going to start. This is the impact it is going to create. So it is very important that your action matches with your communication, or you communicate and act accordingly. Otherwise, you as a project manager, it creates a low trust in you, and it encourages speculations in the team, and causes confusion. It appears to be a simple model, but very powerful. Just think, as project managers, are we communicating and acting in a balanced way? Because if you're communicating too much, then also people panic and people are pressurized. Sorry, if you're communicating too less, then also people sometimes are not happy because they feel you're not communicating enough. So this is one of the very critical models, and I hope it is helpful for you with this example of the 2000 layoffs which I explained you. So this is all about the basics, the very basics of communication management. I would still say that this is all theory. Now let's go to the most important aspect of the time today, that is change. And change, that there is only one thing that is constant today, is change. Now let's say that you had a very good stakeholder management strategy. You delivered everything, you planned everything, you identified your stakeholders, but in the middle of your project, there is a change. Now suddenly the change can be due to different reasons. It's very good that in the beginning of the project you did this, you identified, analyzed, documented, had a strategy, had a beautiful communication plan, everything is working. Now suddenly something changes. Sometimes the priorities changes, the need changes, the market changes, and again I would quote the same example of recession. Because the way people needs are during the peak time when the business is at its peak, and the needs of the customer stakeholders when there is a recession, when there is a money crunch, are very different. Even your strategic goals, your alignments are very different. Now let's take this example that you were working, there was a boom time, and then suddenly recession kicks in. Suddenly the priorities changes, everyone starts doing cost cutting. If there is a crunch, everyone wants to save money. Lot of things go in a different mode, right? So the needs and the priorities are constantly changing based on the technology advances and the way market aligns to the needs. And this specifically applies to the projects which are running for a long period of time. You cannot have one stakeholder management strategy in the beginning of the project and you feel that okay, now it will work for years together. No. So it is very important to analyze this on the regular basis. So sometimes the important changes that happen is some new stakeholders come in, and then suddenly everything changes. And priorities changes, the impact changes, the competitors come in, the costing comes in, the technology changes, suddenly again the costing aspects come in, the customer vision and strategy changes. There are reorgs. I'm sure you all must be very, very familiar with this. These are the types of reorgs. There are constant reorganizations happening. There is a change in the customer management. There is a change in your own organization. Suddenly the vision, mission changes, right? If the top person changes, everything changes. And then, very importantly, if your manager changes, and I'll come to this point in a while, why this is important. What is the impact? Because sometimes our stakeholder management strategies which we devise, considering the complete scenario, is for that particular scenario of people or stakeholders. And then there are always negative stakeholders. And you generally whenever you are take the strategy, it is aligned to the support we get from the current stakeholders. See, in any project there are always neutral stakeholders, positive stakeholders and negative stakeholders. And sometimes we don't have a neutral strategy. We have a strategy which will work in that particular scenario. And that strategy is working fine because you have support from certain stakeholders. Let's say, there is some problem, there are some negative stakeholders in the customer's team, but the strategy you have devised is working because you have the support of the senior management from the customer's team, because you have brought it to their notice and you have a buy-in, and they agree that yes, there are challenges and you are dealing in a certain way. Now just imagine that suddenly that person in the customer management team who was supporting you goes off. Now what happens to those negative stakeholders? And the worst thing to happen is one of those negative stakeholders now come into position of power. Now how are they going to impact you? Or let's say an internal strategy, you are a project manager, you have difficult people in your team and you are dealing with them in a certain way. And it is working just because you have support from your management and your immediate manager. Now just imagine that that support is gone, in the sense that the people who were agreeing with your strategy have moved on. Suddenly the whole scenario changes, and I'll come in more details in a while on this. So what do you do in such a situation? So I think it is very important. First thing to analyze is, immediately you need to look at your communication plan. You have to be very proactive and dynamic to understand that any process, any communication, any strategy which you have devised before the change occurs is valid. And if it is no more valid, you need to take immediate action. So let's say that, the strategy is unproductive and unauthorized. I think this is not a good to have situation, but if that is there, and if you find out, or just because you come into the game as a project manager and the project is running in the beginning, right? I have similarly faced the situation. So there was a project which was running for a while, and then another project manager came in and he found some of the unauthorized processes or strategies, or they were unproductive. You need to make that change, but change is very, very difficult because there is going to be a lot of resistance. Even before resistance, the challenge is about the acceptance of you as a project manager before even you can take any action and deal with that resistance. But it is important to stop these things immediately because they may be unethical, they may be unproductive, they may be unauthorized, they might be against the values of your organization. And then let's go to the next grid, that is orange grid, where it's unproductive but authorized. So there is some process, there is some communication, or there is some strategy, which is good, but it is not yielding the right results. It is not giving the effective results. It's not giving the right impact. It is very important to modify these processes. It doesn't make any sense to continue them just because you define them at the beginning of the project. I like this example of in one of our projects where we found that some of the meetings were unproductive. They were not yielding any results. We stopped them. We had a case where the Scrum meetings were not productive. If you have a big team of 30 people and there were 3 parallel functional groups, and we found that the Scrum meeting was not very productive. So we immediately stopped it and we said, let's have a Scrum meeting only between the leads, and let the leads have the Scrum meeting in turn with their groups, because that kind of saved the time, because there was no point in getting the information of 30 people for a Scrum meeting. There was not much direct impact. The interactions between the leads were enough to represent their teams. So these are some of the examples of communication where you need to constantly look at these things. And then of course the quadrant where it's a certain process, communication or strategy is productive but unauthorized. Now here unauthorized also means that you don't have a buy-in, or it's not the part of your standard organizational process, or it's not formally agreed in the beginning. So this is a very good thing to have. Again, you need to say that we have found this in the course of time, this works very well, and we should probably make it more formal. So this is an opportunity for improvement, and it comes with the part of change and continuous improvement. And then the last quadrant is the green quadrant, where you are productive as well as authorized. So you need to continue supporting those processes or communications or strategies and try to leverage the benefits of this. So I think this is the first model of change. And then of course the second one is to repeat this cycle again. When there is a change of stakeholder management or people, even if a single person changes or sometimes the critical people change, you need to start all over again. You need to do this whole analysis again, otherwise there can be severe failures, which I have seen from a practical example. So this is more of a theory. Now here comes the real crux of this whole thing. So yes, there are stakeholders, there are a lot of stakeholders in the team, and we always have negative stakeholders. So is there a single formula which will always work? Yes, we have guidelines as we have seen in different quadrants, for the typical stakeholders, what works, what doesn't work. But do you think that you can just put them into quadrants and then follow the strategy? Is there a single formula which will work always? No, I don't think so. It totally depends on the scenario and every project is different. But the first thing which I've observed from my experience is the one important formula to succeed is you as a project manager, what is your ability and power you have in this project which will impact the success and failure of stakeholder management and communication management. And that depends on your position in the organization. A simple example can be, are you working in a matrix organization? Is it a weak matrix or a strong matrix or a balanced matrix or a composite matrix? For example, in a weak matrix, your position itself is very weak. So you have limited authorities because there are other powerful and authority-based functional roles which come into position. So if your position itself is weak, I think your stakeholder management will probably limit to that. This is what I have seen from my experience. Another thing is the support, the support you have in your organization from your stakeholders, your management, top management. I think that directly impacts, the success in handling the different stakeholders. Because if you don't have build the credibility or build trust with, the critical stakeholders in your organization or the team, it may be difficult to get the buy-in. It may be difficult to make them listen to you. And when things go wrong, there are too many negative stakeholders, you might not even get the benefit of doubt. So this is very important that you have good support in the organization. The next important thing is the network. I don't think it's only inside the organization, it's inside and outside the organization. Today, if you see what is the topmost skill required to be successful in the corporate world and to grow is the network. I mean, networking is a big thing that people are talking about. So you having a good network will help you, get support, information, help from the people to quickly overcome problems. So your networking skills, your relationships with the people, and your leadership qualities, the ability to get the job done, that is probably, at the team level, and your ability to impact and influence the decisions at different levels in order to handle the stakeholders in the right way. I think this is the first important thing required to be successful in stakeholder management and hence, managing the communication with the stakeholders. If this is not there, just imagine, you don't have support from anyone in the organization. And there are negative stakeholders everywhere who are negatively impacted. How are you going to handle them? Because the moment you try to deal with them, they might in turn, impact you. And then if you don't have the support, if your position of your actions itself are being questioned, then probably, you can't move ahead. Sometimes, the project may be successful, you may not be successful. And sometimes it may be the vice versa. So I think this is the first important formula to be successful about your position in the organization. The second thing I feel, these are some of the golden rules. I think this will always work as a part of communication and stakeholder management, which will help you succeed in stakeholder management. As I said, take care of the analysis at all the levels. This is very important. Minimize creating negative stakeholders. See, when you are trying to create a stakeholder management strategy, try to minimize creating negative stakeholders because it's common sense, right? We all will agree. There are more negative stakeholders, the more obstacles. So I've seen very senior level people, or many times the people don't bother about certain stakeholders because they feel that, they are into some different quadrant. They are less engaged, they have low power, they have low influence. And we feel, and sometimes they might be creating obstacles and hurdles. And that point of time we feel, they're easy to deal with. We can easily ignore them or we can, play against them. But as far as possible, don't try to, create more negative stakeholders because you never know when they will become powerful. You never know when they will come in power and then they will start impacting you. And these are some of the examples from the real case studies I'm quoting that the people did not bother about some of the stakeholders and had a strategy would should negatively impact them, and then suddenly they came into power and the whole project was changed in the direction. And then very important, so try to eliminate the effect of impact created on negative stakeholders. I think this is very interesting thing. I have seen this happening at the strategic level. I know some of the builders in Mumbai who were trying to create the project, and then there were some stakeholders who were impacted by it. The simple thing, the most simple strategy at the strategic level to eliminate the impact of them was cash compromise. This is at a strategic level. Or I have seen another government case where they were trying to do the road widening, and the houses around the roads were impacted by it. The government just came in and paid the money to them. They in turn gave them some other space in the city in the prime area. So they were actually negatively impacted, but the kind of strategy they made to eliminate the impact, the stakeholders were happy. They just moved on. This is at the strategic level. What about at the team level, at the organization level? Some of the strategies I know is this as simple strategy is rewarding the team members. The people who are negatively impacted. Some of the strategies I have seen is promoting them. Some of the strategies are to give them role change. So these can be very simple strategies at the team level. So because there are certain situations where some stakeholders are negatively impacted, how can you eliminate them? Or how can you minimize the impact on them? Right? So there are a lot of negotiations that happen at the business level, the VC mergers, acquisitions. These are some of the strategic level things which I have seen in my experience to eliminate or minimize the impact on negative stakeholders. And then of course it's common sense, right? Try to create as much as positive stakeholders. So what are the things you need to do to convert the negative stakeholders into positive? It is very simple. In simple cases, if you know what is impacting them, and if you can handle that, you can easily create them into positive stakeholders. And then coming to the customer specifically, see, it is very important to put yourself in customer shoes today. It's very important because if you fail to understand what customer is trying to achieve, and if it does not achieve that, there is absolutely no meaning in the success of the project, because the success doesn't limit to one project, right? Today it's again a global world. People look at the business level. Your management or your organization, today I don't think majors you want, okay, we just delivered this project, we got the money, it's done. No. The people look again at the bigger picture, the strategic picture. What next? Have I built a long-term relationship with this customer? Will this customer come to me again? Right? Do I get repeat business? See, sometimes you might be able to get away with certain things and able to deliver. But have you built that positive customer experience? Have you built that trust and empathy so that the customer will come to you again? I think this is one of the biggest things today most of the organizations are measuring success against. And then the trusted advisor. How many of you can go and say certain things to the customer even though you are impacted at the cost or the business level? Okay, don't take this approach, don't take this design because it will cost you more money, it will cost you more time. This is the biggest place where you can build trust, by telling the customer that no, this is not the right strategy for you, this will impact your performance, this will impact your operational cost, this will impact your this. Are you able to play a trusted advisor role? I think this is one of the key things which are you able to go back and tell to the customer, no, this was wrong, there is a risk involved in this. I think these are some of the very critical factors while communicating and stakeholder management which will help you in succeeding. And these are, really golden rules, will never fail. Be always complete, thorough and honest in your job and role. That always helps, because when the things go wrong, when you are perfect, when you have done things in letter and spirit, it will will definitely help you. Always provide authentic data and information. Be ethical in all your actions, decisions, and communication. This really helps when things go wrong. See, till the things are going fine, no one questions, no one gets into the details. But the moment things go wrong, everything is postmortem, everything is questioned. And that time, if you have done some things wrong, that time people are waiting, just to find a scapegoat or a victim. And this is a very long-term strategy. This will never fail. We all hear about 2G scam and so many things, right? So when things come out, they come out in a bad way. So these practices will always help. Gain credibility, build trust with everyone, build relationships, get support from all the stakeholders. The most important thing is, for a project manager, the most important communication tool is the status report, the progress status reports. It's a very, very powerful tool, to communicate all the aspects of the projects and raise risks and, be extremely authentic in this, because I have seen this as the biggest flaw, where things go wrong. I have seen a case where, the customer had filed a litigation against the company due to some differences, and the failure in the project. And then the status reports were produced in the court, and then the status reports were not reflecting the right status. It was all painted green. It was showing the green picture. And when the litigations happened in the court, when the company started saying, no, this was not fine, that was not fine, this was not working well, the customer said, where is it? It's not being shown in your status report. The status report is all painted green. So these are the things, and this is a real case. I think many people fail to understand the importance of what they are projecting in the status report and what impact it could create in such situations when things go wrong. I think this is a very real example which I am putting. So use this as a powerful tool, and always that they say that a project manager should always show a pessimistic view. I don't know whether you agree to me or not, but project manager always takes a pessimistic approach, because if you are preparing for the worst, it always helps. So be very authentic in the status report, and of course follow all the processes in practice in letter and spirit. Very important, document all the decisions made in a formal documents. Always take formal sign-offs, approvals as records. Because this is another thing, it is very helpful when there is a change in stakeholder. These are the things which help a lot. Keep your management informed and alerted about the risk. Escalate at the right time. It appears to be a very small thing, but I have seen big failures just because things were not escalated at the right time. Again, very important, have joint review sessions of risks with the customers, with your senior management, and gain agreement on the risk. What are the mitigation strategies you are adopting, and document them well. This is very critical because I have seen different stakeholders have different tolerances towards risk. When you try to bring different stakeholders together, someone says this is a very high risk, someone says this is a very low risk, and there's third person who says no, this is not a risk at all. So getting an agreement on this, what is the risk, what is the mitigation strategy, always helps. And then, this is the world where, there is a lot of politics involved at all the levels. And then you have to be the part of the game. And then sometimes, in your life, or in your project management, I'm sure you might have faced these phases and situations where, you might have been expected to compromise on values, ethics, and how do you deal with it. And again, there is no one single formula. So it totally depends on the situation and your values and the choices you make. So I would not say that, in a very complex political scenario, there is one single rule. And then coming to the most important things, never openly work against anyone in the customer's team, because ultimately they are customers. So we discussed this enough. Again, a very classic example, every day is not Sunday. Never take customer or long-term relationships for granted. Sometimes, things may be working fine, but remember that after all, it's a customer, and, treat him or her like a customer. And I have seen again a case because the organizations failing to gauge, the pulse of the customer, because you don't know why that customer is coming to you, why that customer is working with me. And then there was this study did when we spoke to the customer was coming to us not because we were best, but because we were better of the worst. So how do you know that? Because as soon as he finds someone better than you, he's going to move on. So it is constantly important, to gauge the pulse of the customer, that why is he coming to you, what is he expecting from you. And again, very critical cases, presenting false information. And another classic example I have seen is project management for the project or project for project management. I've seen many project managers who do very tactical things. They feel that this is a project manager. These are my deliverables. If I do that, I'm done. Okay, I have to do status report. I have to do one scheduling. I have to maintain a financial sheet. If I do this, I'm done. So I don't think so, right? Even if you are doing everything, and ultimately if your project is failing, your product is failing, the quality is not there, what's the use, right? So I think I have seen from my practical experience that many project managers fail, to gauge this approach, and they just focus on their deliverables. But ultimately, project management is not for that, right? If everything is audited, everything is fine, but ultimately the product is failure in the market or the customer is not happy, what's the use of the project management? So I think that is important to, take this into account. And some of the very, very important reasons for failure from some of the case studies, lack of stakeholder understanding and awareness at all the levels, and then hence lack of proper strategy to handle that caused the failure of the project. Lack of visibility, information and inclusion, not having a bigger picture. The project manager not having this led to the failure because he did not have a strong strategy to handle the project. Example can be a weak matrix. Over-reliance on one person managing the show. Sometimes what happens is, there is one person who has very good relations with the customer, heroic efforts, and everyone says that, okay, he is handling it, he is managing the show. And not being aware of the challenges, the truth, where we are going, and suddenly, it can be a big failure. Inability to take action against certain people who are in power. Sometimes, we feel that the strategy is to, just work with them, live with them. And then when things go wrong, people question that, why did you say this? So, having a balanced approach and keeping the management informed. Another big reason I have seen is some organizations are very busy with internal politics and they miss the bigger picture at the strategic level. So they are busy fighting amongst themselves and miss the bus. The customer moves on. Sometimes it is also seen that people who are in power are busy safeguarding their own interests and they keep their personal interest above the project and organization interest, which lead to the success or failure. People who are sometimes technically weak have high reliance, due to lack of confidence actually, they have high reliance on certain people. And because actually what they are doing is they are protecting their own interest and they are playing on certain people. And due to that, a person may be technically strong, but if you miss the project management picture, then it might be difficult, right? You might fail. Then, competing parties just focusing too much on putting each other down and ultimately the project fails. Because you are not focusing on the project, you are focusing on putting each other down. And, just simple thing, not being open to what people are raising. Many times it is observed that people are speaking, people are telling something, people are raising the risk, but, they are just being ignored. And, sometimes politics takes precedence over everything and it fails. And again, some examples of, not giving the right status, hiding problems until last minute, ignoring the request, communicating with the stakeholders too late, inviting the stakeholders too early in the decision making, involving the wrong stakeholders, management not valuing the contribution of the stakeholders. These are some of the examples which have been taken from the case studies where there was a failure in the project due to lack of proper stakeholder management and communication management. And then the biggest impact I have seen is, in spite of the fact that you are doing everything, still this project might be successful, but sometimes there is a cost that you have to pay, while handling the stakeholders. That the cost you might have to pay for the positive outcome and sometimes for the negative outcome. Sometimes, let's take an example that there is something unethical happening and you have to stop it in the interest of the project, in the interest of the organization. But in turn, you might be spoiling your relationships with the people. Or sometimes, the other way around, I have seen that you want to maintain your relationships with some critical stakeholders on the power, and because they are not following certain processes or certain things, you might have to balance the needs of the stakeholder management, you might have to compromise on the product quality and completeness. Sometimes there may be loss of business or money. Are you able to say no if someone is drastically telling you to do something wrong? Yes, you may lose the business, but are you able to say no? Sometimes you have to compromise on your integrity, ethics and values. Sometimes you might be successful, your project might be successful, but your performance might be impacted, your job might be impacted, there might be monetary losses. So this project management is basically balancing all these things. So sometimes just by doing the right things, you might be impacted in one of these aspects. Sometimes to avoid doing wrong things, you might be impacted on all these aspects. So it's really, there is no one single formula. The challenge is to be successful without compromising on any of the aspects. I think that's the biggest challenge, and most of the times it is difficult to achieve. And sometimes at the team level, we can achieve it, at the cost of stretching the team and, motivating the team and rewarding them in a different way. But sometimes when the things go wrong, it is at the cost of making someone, the victims or the scapegoats. So coming to the process, I think having strong communication management plan, this is really the science of project management. Having steering committee meetings periodically at internal and external level, giving correct presentations to the customer, having joint reviews, making aware of all the risks to the project status reports, designing the levels and types of reports, their frequency, audience, having proper meeting calendars, agendas, having the right escalation channels, very important, escalating at the right time to the right people, and having the right SLA. So how much time do I wait? Yes, I have escalated at level 1, if there is no action. How much time do I wait and go to the next level? Having the clear RNRs defined. Yeah, these are the simple things in communication management which can go a long way, in making the project successful. So when is the best time to report a problem? Again, it depends. After it's being solved, if you have very good trust with your management. Again, it depends on your manager to manager, but sometimes it is also good to make that senior management aware of that problem and let him or her know that we are working on it and we are fairly confident that it will be solved. When is the worst time to report the problem? When it's too late to fix it. And then, of course, analyze all the issues first before, when you present to the stakeholders, because be prepared to answer their questions and be prepared, with all the data points, because when you go to the stakeholders with issues or problems, and if you are not able to give proper answers or you are not prepared, you are going to lose the credibility. And next time when you raise a problem, probably they are going to ignore you. Right? Again, never give negative surprises to any critical stakeholders, and always listen to concerns of the people, because you never know who might be raising the critical problem. And many times I have seen in a group of 10-15 people, there is one person who is saying something, who is raising some problems or risk, and most of the times people ignore them. But I am telling you that one person is the most critical person, and he might be actually saying something very important. And with my experience, I have seen very few people actually come up and say the real problems. Very few people actually come up and speak. So don't ignore that one person, because many times there is perception that, when others are not facing the problem, oh, it's only one person, so it might be, a specific issue. No. It's actually the other way around. I have seen that very few people actually come up with real and critical problems. Many times the real and critical issues are actually, kind of pushed in behind the carpet. So these are some of the experiences. These are some of the practical things which I have learned through my experiences. And then there are strange behaviors in our projects. Sometimes, people attach higher value to the things they own. That's called the endowment effect. So try to, neutralize or balance these needs. Then there is a confirmation bias. That is called selective listening. People will search for or interpret information in the way that confirms their preconceptions. Then there is a bandwagon effect, doing things because others do them. Do you really want them? And then the last and the important thing is framing problems. Framing the same data in different ways leads to making different. Data is very, very critical, and data is very, very, same data can be presented in different ways. And if data is presented in the wrong way, or picturized in a wrong way, it can give a completely different picture than the real fact. So just be aware of this biases and these effects, and I'm sure some of these things will help you in your projects in handling communications and stakeholder management better. So that's all I have to speak about this. Thanks a lot for your time. So I aim with this quote that stakeholder management is a never-ending task of balancing and integrating multiple relationships and multiple objectives throughout the project. It never ends. So thanks a lot. That's all. So if you have any questions, you can type it.
Yeah, the questions are already shared with you. Can you see them in the questions pane?
Okay, yes. If a success criteria has been defined early in the project and you take a project in the middle, it is good idea to redefine the success criteria? Yes, I think it's very important to actually at least revalidate and confirm. I think this is more important when actually the person who gives you the success criteria changes. But I think it's always good to revalidate as a starting point. Is the goal of project management win or win-win or win minimum lose in the real world? See, the most ethical value is win-win, right? The most ethical value is win-win, and I think the idea of project management is definitely win-win in all the cases. But of course, there are some stakeholders like competitors. So I think in the competitive world, it is win-lose. But that is more at a strategic level, and as long as it is done in an ethical and right way, I think there is nothing wrong. So if I'm trying to win the market by getting a best class product, by getting cool features, I don't think there is anything wrong in that, as long as you are doing it in an ethical way. As you mentioned that competitors are negative stakeholders who are outside the boundary of the project, what should be the strategy for handling them, and what are things we should keep in mind? So I think there are different ways of looking at it. I think if you see some of the companies, what information you need to expose to the competitors and what information you need to keep confidential from the competitors till your project or product is launched. I think this is one of the important strategy. And there are different ways of looking at it. Okay, so let's take the example of Tata Nano. So it was announced almost 1 year before that Tata Nano car is going to come and it is going to be a 1 lakh car, right? So there was negative impact on the stakeholders. How? One thing is because let's say that by making this announcement, the Tata had touched the class of the society which were planning to buy the vehicles, and probably they postponed their decisions of buying the vehicle by a year because they waited to buy the 1 lakh Nano. So what has happened to the competitors? Of course their business is impacted. Someone else who was going to buy the car in that 1 year has put their decision on hold. So this strategy was actually positively impacting Tata but negatively impacting the stakeholders, right? By making the announcement. So they did not keep this information confidential, right? Till the release of the product. But other way of looking at it is, because they announced this publicly, there is also a research that is published that the competitors influenced political parties, which created the obstacles to that project in West Bengal by not keeping the information confidential. So I think it is purely organization's decision, so what to expose, what not to expose. I know certain organizations who don't even expose the name of the products within the organizations and they use code names. I have seen in some of the IT teams for their strategic projects, the senior management uses code names like Ostrich, Zebra, all that. So they keep it confidential inside the organization also. So I think it's purely organization's view of handling it. When reorganization happens in a company, how are projects impacted, and is this changes should be informed to the stakeholders and customers? Yes, very, very, very important thing. See, when the reorganization happens, I think there are a lot of things that are questioned. It totally depends on, the person who comes in the power. So I have seen a case where, suddenly the costing was being questioned. The person who came in the power, he said, why have you outsourced this project to this X company? X company is giving us with this rate. I know a Y company who is giving it half of the rate. So they started questioning the basic things. Then they started questioning the processes, they started questioning the qualities, they started questioning everything. So it totally depends on the person who comes in power, how he defines success, what he values, what he does not value. So there can be a drastic and dramatic change actually. How are the projects impacted? You can lose that customer totally, because the customer who will come into power may not even want to work with you. He might have his own interest, he might want to go with some other customer. He might not want to work on that product. He might not be, convinced with the features. And yes, this change should be informed. And when the changes are happening at our level, at our organizational level, yes, it is very important to inform them to the customers, because sometimes the customers also have their own choices. I have seen that customers were not ready to release the resource, and all the impacts of that. So yes, it is organization to organization, understanding the impact, understanding what they compromise, what you can compromise, what you cannot compromise. But very important, never give a surprise to the customer, or never hide any information from the customer, or giving people heads up and informing them well in advance always helps, and it builds trust. It's very important, it builds trust. Because if you don't tell the customer and suddenly your project manager disappears one day, I think it's not a good, it's like a surprise, right? It's a negative surprise. And no one would like that. When you say stakeholder management, there will be internal and external stakeholders. What will be the strategy to be followed to manage them? See, strategy is there, that's what I told you. There is no single formula, there is no one rule. You have to go case by case. You need to actually identify every stakeholder, identify his interests, identify his aspirations, identify how he will be positively or negatively impacted by the outcome of the project. And then devise a strategy, to create less obstacles due to that for your project. So there is no one rule. But as we have seen in different stakeholder models, there are some certain guidelines, right? For example, we said that the person who has high power, but he has no support, or who has less cooperation, we still have to live with that person. You have to disagree and commit, because you have no say over that person. He is the highest authority over the project. He might be doing certain things wrong, or he might not be doing the things in the best way. But to begin with, you have to live with that person. Or sometimes, you might, if you feel that he or she is doing drastically wrong, then you may choose to escalate. But then you may be ready to bear the consequences. I think it's purely your choice. It's the situation at that time. It depends upon the criticality and the sensitivity of that interest or impact. And it depends on the impact to the project, to the organization, to you. I think different people deal with situations in a different way. And as I told you in the beginning, people deal with it on how they are measured, how success is measured, or how their performance is measured, or what organization values. So I don't think there is one single formula. That's what I would say. Regarding the change in the stakeholder, during the course of time, is having flexible stakeholder management technique helpful? You see, it's not flexible, it's basically adaptable. See, basically, you need to be continuously aware that for one scenario, you have designed a strategy. If there is a change, even in a single stakeholder, you need to look at the whole picture again. And especially the critical or the most powerful stakeholder, like the sponsor or the customer. You need to look at the whole picture again. You need to initiate the dialogue with that person again. So you need to be flexible. It's not about flexibility, it's about adaptability and being aware of the change and being able to deal with it to minimize the impact on the project or on you as a company or organization. As we discussed about the status report, can you please let me know which all points must cover in the status report? Yeah, so the most important thing, the first thing status report covers is the current status. And it is against time, cost, scope and quality. And then second thing, it's comparisons against the plan. Status report is always planned versus actuals. So first you give the current status and then give its status against the plan. Compare the actual status with the plan. And that is called variance, right, against the baseline. So let's say that you are ahead of schedule, it's a good news. You are behind the schedule, it is bad news. So first thing is actual status, second thing is variance, that is comparison against the actuals of the plan. And third thing is the forecast. So forecast is, let's say that you are behind the schedule as on today. So now what are you going to forecast? Will this trend continue? Will this schedule change? Can you compensate for the schedule change? Or no, it's a permanent loss of 1 week. You cannot make up for it. So you need to change your end date or end deadline. Or no, it's a 1 week loss, but it can be compensated over a period of time. So the third thing is forecast, right? And the fourth thing is, so first is your status, actual status, then comparison against plan, that is variance. Third thing is forecast. This is not only for schedule. It is for cost, schedule, scope and quality. And then the fourth thing is risks. Risks are the very critical part of the status reports and the critical risk and how they will impact your triple constraint, schedule, time, cost and quality. And then of course, you can take, if you are tracking the customer satisfaction or success criteria, I think what I do is in the monthly status reports, I take a monthly feedback from the customer to gauge the pulse of the customer. Because if it's a 6-8 months project, I don't want to wait till the 8th of the project, to get the feedback from the customer and to get a surprise that he was not happy with me. So it is a good idea to have a steering committee meeting once in a month and take feedback from the customer on how is he feeling about our service. So I actually ask the customer at every month, so today, as on today, how do you rate me on a scale of 1 to 10? If he or she is saying something negative, at least I have 8 months, to correct that problem. At least I can correct it. But if I go at the end of the project and take a feedback, it's of no use, especially when it's an unsatisfied customer. So if you take early feedback, if you take regular feedback, you might be able to convert an unhappy customer into a happy customer. So you may choose to track it in the monthly status report or any special report. Do any problems surface in the project communicated to the customer directly or to the PMO? Yes. They will surface. There are so many things. There are mistakes in the contracts, there are assumptions, there are the risks which are not analyzed properly, there are technology challenges. It is very important, they should be communicated to the customer and critical stakeholders as soon as possible. But of course, you need to go through the proper communication channels, proper path. See, if it is an internal risk, you have to deal it yourself, right? You cannot go to a customer and say that one of my team members is not working with. Or you cannot go to the customer and say that there is attrition problem, right? So these are internal risks. Then there are organizational level risks. Probably that also you cannot discuss with the customer. So you should be very clear that which are the risks, which are the issues you can discuss with your customer. which the customer is accountable for. For example, if the customer has some dependency that has to be met before we deliver, and if he or she is not delivering that, then that is the risk you can discuss with the customer. If there are some licenses or some important things that the customer is supposed to deliver to you, and if it is needed or there are challenges with that, yes, you can discuss that with the customer. So first, it is important to understand that who is responsible for this and at what level it needs to be handled, right? So it's case by case, You need to decide, what problems you need to discuss with whom and take it at the different levels. I am currently working in London and specifically want to ask if you get a choice between choosing ethics, values, or concentrating on the client project. What would you do? Take for granted that balance is not possible. I would definitely go on ethics, as I told you, because that's the best way of going. Yes, sometimes it may impact my relations with people. Sometimes it may impact my performance or monetary values because I'm spoiling my relationships. But I think at least by going the ethic way, I'll be able to have a good sleep at night, and I will not always be under this fear that I did something wrong and I'm covering that up, and I don't know when that will get exposed, right? So I think I would always go the ethic way, and I've always done that. What happens when the project is completed and is in the post-implementation phase? Suddenly there are new stakeholders at the client side who are totally against the success criteria defined in the beginning and also insist for workflows. How should we manage this situation? So this happens, actually this is a very common thing. So you need to work all over again. You need to, so see we don't have choice, right? If the stakeholders success criteria has changed, we have to go with them because they are defining the success criteria. So we have to go with them and we need to listen to that and we need to come back and analyze the impact of that. And if there is an impact of that on the schedule, cost, quality and scope, then we need to go back and tell them that this was that is where the documentation becomes very important. In the beginning, if you have documented, that is why following all the processes becomes very important. So in the beginning, if you have documented, if you have taken the sign-off and approval of the first stakeholder on the objectives and the success criteria of the project, it is very easy for you to go later and say, see, this was what was agreed and we were delivering against this. Now that it has changed, this is the impact on this. Are you ready? If that person is ready for the impact of the cost or schedule, then you agree with that, again redefine that, again get the sign-off, baseline it, and deliver the project against this. So that's all. These are the questions. I hope I have answered them satisfactorily. Please free to write more questions if you feel that if your questions are not answered satisfactorily.
Okay, there are a few more questions, but we are completely running out of time. So those questions can be taken offline and posted on the site.
Okay, so I cannot see more questions, Keshav.
I've not shared those questions because we are already 4:41, so we want to conclude the session now.
You can share it with me and I can answer them offline on the site.
Yeah, sure, I'll share that.
So thanks a lot for your time and I hope this was useful to you. See, this is not from any book or something, it's mostly from my experiences, and I hope I have added value to your work which you can go back and implement it. Thanks a lot and all the best to all of you. Anything else, Keshav?
Thanks, Ms. Sucheta, for your informative session on stakeholder management mindset in managing communication in modern times. It was indeed an enlightening session. I would also like to thank our participants for their support in making this webinar a huge success. The recording of this webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. Gentlemen, after the successful completion of Software Project Management series, TechGig announces Advanced Java webinar series. The first session in this webinar series is happening tomorrow, 27 December at 3 p.m. Topic for tomorrow's webinar is Most Important and Frequently Used Java J2EE Design Patterns. We'll be having Satyat Kaur, Senior Consultant at Dell Parrot Systems as our guest speaker. So see you all tomorrow. Have a nice day. Thank you.